Hello, it's Mike at Monday here, and welcome to my daily Facebook Live, where I am at the moment, anyway, helping you with your biggest obstacles and challenges in your creative work, life and career. So today I'm going to cover a question by JJ from JJ Roman Varela about how do you stay creative and focused on finishing your music when you've got all of this other stuff to do, like marketing, promotion, accounts, and all of the rest of it. But before that, if you have a big challenge, and let's face it, who doesn't, it's holding you back in the studio, out of the studio, in your creative life, in your creative business, in your creative work, in any way at all, then let me know what that is in the comments. Or if you're a lurker or you want to remain anonymous for any reason, send me a message to my Facebook page and I will answer it in a future Facebook Live. So here is JJ's question in all its glory. Nowadays, you've got to be a musician, marketing director, manager, promoter and accounting director, among other things, to develop your career. So how do you avoid losing the creativity of not just making music? How do you keep the excitement with all the administrative tasks that brings running your own brand, band, project and label? Thanks for all your advice and time, Mike. Okay, so before I actually answer the question, I just want to go on a slight tangent, because the fact that you can now reach your own fans and to get somewhere to where you can start employing other people to help you, you do have to take on all of these non-musical tasks like marketing and promoting and networking and the rest of it. But embedded in that question there could be, and if there isn't, then I do apologise, but I know that other people kind of have this belief, or that there's a certain bitterness around it, where it's kind of like, well, these days it's like this, which means, you know, oh, I wish it was like that. And if you don't have that belief, JJ, then I do apologise. I'm just saying it because I've noticed there's a kind of meme out there that, you know, it's so hard these days, I wish it was like it was before. But one of the reasons that you have to do all this stuff now, or all this stuff has kind of come into our world, is because almost everything else around making and releasing music is about a gajillion times easier and cheaper. I mean, I'm not going to go into a long and boring in my day rant, but trust me, the challenges back then were big as well, just as the challenges today are big. They're just different challenges. It's always been hard to do this, and it always will be. If it was easy, or if there weren't challenges, then everybody would be making a massive success of it, and everybody isn't. Now that doesn't mean it's impossible, it's just hard, and it's just hard now in a different way than it was before. I mean, I'm not saying it's better or it's worse. In fact, I'm not making any judgment at all. I'm just asking you to think about how things are, and instead of wasting energy on, not that you are JJ, but anyone who is, instead of wasting energy on wishing they were the way they were before, use that energy to work out how you are going to do it in the way things are now. Which is what I'm sure you're attempting to do by asking me this question, JJ. So, I want you to think of it like this. Think of something that you dislike doing, but which you have to do in your life. I mean, an example for myself is maybe checking emails or taking the rubbish out. Okay, so I have to take the rubbish out every single day. So would it make sense for me to say, hang on, I'm just going to move my mind map down, otherwise I'm going to be looking down all the time. I need to sort this out. Progress, not perfection, eh? Okay, so would it make sense for me to say, how do I keep up the excitement and creativity of doing my creative work when I have to empty the bins? I mean, for some people they might say that. For most of us, that would seem kind of ridiculous, wouldn't it? Why does doing one thing in your creative business have to ruin your creativity in another? Couldn't it actually be said that it could motivate you to make music? Because then music, the creative part, when you're in the studio, is your escape from all of that. Another thing you can do is actually find the joy in those other jobs that you have to do. Because actually promoting yourself and networking, that's a creative task in a different way as well. So that's the other way. So number one is to think of it like, well, it doesn't actually impact my creativity at all, because my creativity is now my escape from all that. And another way of looking at it is, where is the creativity in these actions that I have to do, like promoting myself, etc., etc. I do have to admit that I personally find it hard to find the creativity in accounting, but many of my accountants who are friends assure me that there is creativity to be found there too. So there you go. So the problem in general isn't that you have to do this stuff, okay? Because at the end of the day, if you are to succeed in this economy, in this market as it is now, the gig economy, some people call it, then all of us need to start to be thinking about doing these things. You kind of have to be a master of many things. I mean, I'm in exactly the same situation as you, JJ. I've got my creative stuff I have to do. I'm writing a book, I have to create these videos, I have to come up with content all the time, and then I have to run the business as well. And there's loads of parts of that I dislike doing, or that I'm not so good at. But what I'm doing is doing it until I can actually get rid of it by giving it to somebody else. That's one of the ways you want to be thinking about it. So you are currently perceiving this stuff as interfering with your music making, but that is in fact a perception you could change. You could just as easily choose to view your music making time, your music making, as your precious time to be creative, and thereby actually making yourself more creative. We are kind of creatures, we compare things. Everything that we perceive is relative to something else. So if you see something ugly and then something kind of not ugly, it looks much more beautiful, right? So in a sense, doing these other things makes the creative time much more precious. Okay, so some practical things that you can do though to make this easier on yourself and do what I'm suggesting. Number one is to chunk, and I've mentioned this in a previous live. So you can either chunk your day, which is what I do actually, or chunk your week. So you could have, I don't know, Mondays is my business day. Or alternatively, you could say I do my creative work from the time I get up to midday, and then the afternoon is for the business stuff. That's one way of doing it. You kind of separate those two things. A second way of separating that is actually physically doing it. We do tend to anchor particular states of mind and particular ways of being to places and objects. I mean, you know, you've probably noticed it when you hear a piece of music that you haven't heard for years. It immediately puts you into that place where you smell a smell that you smell on holiday, and you're like, oh, back in Greece in 1994 or whatever. We do that with everything. It naturally happens. So if you use a different workspace for your business, the business tasks, and to your creative, your music making, that will also help you create that separation. Certainly don't be having all your notifications and your email open when you are creating. I mean, that is going to cause a really big problem. Completely separate it. If you don't have a different workspace, just have two different accounts on your computer. One you log into and you've got the music stuff and no notifications. The other account you log into on your computer, you've got your business stuff. That's another way of doing it. You can do it digitally as well. Create that separation as if you are two different people. Another thing that you can do is do your creative work as a priority. So obviously finishing music for music producers, or finishing creative work for other people who are other creators, is the key to everything else. There's absolutely none of it's going to work if you don't have something to promote, if you don't have something to market, if you don't have something to network with. That is the most important thing that you have to protect. So that means that wants to be your priority. And how do you make it a priority? Well, you do it at the time of the day where you are best. So for me, that means first thing in the morning. For other people, that might mean a different time of day, but you probably know your best time of day to create. That is when you do your creative work. And then you do your other stuff at other times. And the final thing that you can do, because it can really, it can feel like it, and it actually is. Trust me, I run an online business and have been for years. It can feel like a grind, a lot of the stuff that you have to do. But what makes it that even more impossible to bear, especially if there's some things you don't like doing, and have found it difficult to find ways of liking it, like for me, it was accounting and checking email, but is think of what you're doing now as simply what you have to do to build your creative business up so that you can eventually get it off your plate. So this isn't forever. This is something that you're doing now in order to get to the point where you can delegate it to someone else. Maybe, eventually you'll get an agent, or you'll get a manager, or you'll employ a PR company. So thinking of these things as, oh, this is my life for the rest of eternity, isn't going to be very easy for you to cope with. But understanding that what you're doing now is temporary, and you're going to get your creative business to a place where you can get it off your plate. I remember when I had children, actually for the first time, I've got 3 kids, but the first child, that baby bit, the newborn baby bit, it's absolute hell. Well, it certainly was for the first one. And I thought that that's what parenthood was, and it was so much harder to deal with because I thought that was it. I was like, oh, my life is over. I'm going to be up. It's ridiculous when you think about it, because that bit at the start, it only lasts a very short amount of time. But for the second child and the third child, even though the second child was much more difficult with their sleep, it was much easier because I knew it was temporary. So just knowing that you are doing this and it's going to be temporary and you're going to get that stuff off your plate. It's actually quite good to do this stuff, because then you know what you're good at, you know what you hate, you know what you like, and you can actually make a list of what you're going to get off your plate first. Okay, so those are my four points. As I said, it's really important in this situation to not waste any energy on thinking about, oh, I wish it was like it was before, because it was hard before, just in a different way. Make sure that you chunk your day or your week, depending on what works for you. Use a different workspace or a different computer, or separate that work within the computer with different accounts. Do your creative work first, or at least when you are at your best, depending on whether you're a night owl or a morning person or an afternoon person. And finally, think of what you're doing now as simply what you have to do temporarily to build your creative business up so that you can get that stuff off your plate. So I hope that's been helpful. If it has been helpful to you and you know somebody who might benefit from it, please share this post, or tag somebody, or just tell them about it and send them to my Facebook page. I'm doing one of these every day of the week. And don't forget to let me know in the comments what is your #1 obstacle that's holding you back, or if you're a lurker or want to remain anonymous, feel free to send me a message to my Facebook page. So until tomorrow, onwards and upwards, and go and finish something.